A young woman in a vivid red coat stood at the edge of Evergreen Ridge as the rain-soaked forest breathed in the dark. Her loyal German shepherd pressed close to her leg, sensing something beneath the storm that no human could hear. Emily had only meant to enjoy a quiet night in her secluded wooden villa, until her dog froze, ears sharp, staring into the abyss below the pines. Through the curtain of rain, Emily lifted her flashlight, and her heart dropped. A police truck lay overturned in the ravine. Inside, a man bleeding, handcuffed to the wheel, and 5 trembling German shepherd pups crying for help. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories. Evergreen Falls always wore its storms like a warning. That night, the forest felt almost sentient, an endless sweep of towering pines twisted by wind, their black silhouettes shuddering beneath sheets of cold mountain rain. The narrow ranger road, slick with mud and hidden potholes, wound like a scar through the wilderness just outside the small Pacific Northwestern town. Anyone with sense stayed indoors during a storm like this. But fate had driven one man much deeper into its teeth. Officer Daniel Reed, 32, broad-shouldered and built like someone carved from obligation and old grief, hung half-conscious inside his overturned police truck at the bottom of a ravine. Rainwater dripped into his dark hair, plastering it against a face lined with faint stubble, and the kind of sharp, weary angles earned from years of holding himself together for others. A deep gash cut across his cheekbone, and blood mixed with the storm, sliding down to his jaw. His wrists, strong, calloused, and usually steady, were now cuffed to the steering wheel, metal digging into bruised skin. He tried to lift his head, but couldn't. His vision swam with darkness. Behind him, from the crushed K9 crate, came the weakest whimpers. 5 German shepherd puppies, no more than 6 weeks old, tiny bodies covered in damp fluff and trembling violently, lay pressed together for warmth. Their little muzzles quivered with each attempt at breath, and their paws scratched uselessly at the bent metal around them. Daniel forced his eyes open at the sound. Even through pain, instinct surged. Protect them. Protect the only things left that hadn't betrayed him. But he couldn't move, couldn't reach them, couldn't even shield them from the icy air pouring in through the shattered windows. A flash of memory flickered. Tieng Het. A boot slamming his ribs. A cold voice demanding the evidence he no longer had. Then the violent shove as the truck went over the edge. The storm swallowed the rest. Across the forest ridge, far from the crash site, Emily Hart lifted a crystal glass of wine to her lips, unaware that her peaceful evening was seconds from fracturing. Emily was the kind of woman people glanced at twice, not just because she was beautiful, though she undeniably was, with her long chestnut brown hair falling in soft waves and eyes the cool, sharp blue of winter lake water, but because she moved with the effortless poise of someone raised among marble halls, charity galas, and family fortunes. Yet beneath the veneer of privilege lay a quiet restlessness, a hunger to be more than a name in a real estate dynasty. That restlessness was why she had come to her secluded wooden estate deep in Evergreen Falls forests, a place built of cedar beams, large windows, and a kind of refined wilderness luxury only extreme wealth could buy. Beside her sprawled Atlas, her massive German shepherd, 4 years old and in his prime, all muscle and discipline. His coat was dark sable, thick and glossy. His ears, sharp and always alert, twitched at every shift of wind. He had the temperament of a guardian born, not aggressive but fiercely aware, loyal to Emily with the unwavering certainty of a creature who had chosen his human once and for all. Atlas had never been completely calm during storms, but tonight something deeper rattled him. The moment thunder rolled across the valley, Atlas lifted his head. A low growl rumbled from his chest, not of fear, but of warning. He rose, hackles bristling, and padded toward the patio doors. Emily frowned and followed, setting down her wineglass on the polished wooden table. "What is it, boy? A deer?" she murmured, expecting nothing more dramatic than wildlife sheltering from the rain. But Atlas didn't act like he'd sensed prey. He acted like he'd sensed danger. He pressed his nose to the gap beneath the door, inhaled sharply, then suddenly threw his head back and released a long, piercing howl that cut through the storm like a blade. Emily felt the sound in her bones. Something was wrong. She grabbed her flashlight, pulled on her raincoat, and stepped outside into the wet, trembling dark. Atlas bounded ahead, weaving between trunks slick with rain. The forest felt alive around them, every gust heavy with tension. Then her beam of light caught something metallic reflecting weakly through the brush. She pushed closer, heart pounding. At the edge of a ravine, the earth sloped downward into darkness. She leaned forward, breath catching. Below lay a wrecked police truck, upside down, one wheel still spinning weakly in the rain. A man hung inside, limp, bound to the wheel like some cruel offering to the storm. And from the back, faint, nearly swallowed by the night, came the desperate cries of puppies. "Oh my God," Emily gasped, voice trembling as the realization hit her. "Who could do this?" Atlas growled softly, stepping in front of her, protective. Emily swallowed, steeling herself, and began sliding down the muddy slope toward the overturned truck. As she reached for Daniel's shoulder, trying to pull him free, a distant light flickered at the top of the ravine, the unmistakable glow of headlights turning onto the forest road. Someone was coming back. Emily half slid, half stumbled down the rain-soaked slope, her breath sharp in the cold, as Atlas circled her like a vigilant shadow. With each step, the overturned police truck loomed larger in the beam of her flashlight. Officer Daniel Reed's unconscious weight had been shockingly heavy when she first grabbed his shoulders, the warmth already leaving his body, but adrenaline gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. Atlas assisted with instinctive precision, gripping Daniel's jacket sleeve gently yet firmly with his jaws, helping Emily drag the injured man upward. The 5 German shepherd pups, wet, shivering, their tiny squeaks thin as threads, Emily tucked into her coat, one against her chest and 4 cradled against her ribs. Their small bodies trembled like fragile engines sputtering in the cold. By the time she reached her front porch, rain hammered the cedar beam roof, and thunder rolled across the valley like distant cannon fire. She shoved the front door open, Atlas rushing inside first as if clearing the way. Warmth surged from the grand stone fireplace, where a faint orange glow still lingered. Emily dropped to her knees, beside the hearth. Her once pristine living room, decorated with hand-woven rugs, tall bookshelves, and soft amber lighting, transformed into an emergency shelter. Daniel Reed lay on the floor, his muscular frame curled inward, shivering violently as water streamed from his dark hair and soaked clothing. Without hesitation, Emily fetched towels, wrapping them around his arms and shoulders. Up close, the man looked even rougher than she expected. Angular jaw dusted with stubble, nose slightly crooked from an old break, a constellation of faint scars across one temple. He was handsome, yes, but in a battered, storm-worn way that spoke of years of standing in the path of danger. A man shaped by duty, and a lifetime of swallowing more stories than he told. The pups cried weakly. Emily pressed them closer to the fire, using one of her expensive wool coats as a bed. Atlas sniffed each pup carefully, then lay next to them, forming a thick wall of fur that radiated warmth. Minutes stretched until Daniel's fingers twitched. Then, slowly, his eyes, a deep, storm-gray color, fluttered open. Instinct hit him before memory. He jerked upright with a gasp, breath ragged, muscles tensing as though expecting an attack. Emily grabbed his shoulder firmly. "Hey, easy. You're safe." His gaze darted across the room, searching. "The pups, where are—" His voice broke in panic. Emily nodded toward the fireplace. "Right there. They're alive." Relief washed across his face, a crack in the mask of a man too accustomed to bracing for loss. His shoulders dropped. He leaned back against the wall, wincing at the pain running through his ribs. "You pulled us out?" "Atlas found you," she said softly. "I followed." Daniel swallowed hard, eyes drifting to the fire. After a moment of silence, Emily asked, "What happened?" His expression tightened. "My commanding officer, Marcus Cole." Even the name seemed to rot the air around it. Daniel continued, voice low and hoarse. "The man everyone praises, the charismatic one with the perfect record. He's been running a weapons and narcotics pipeline for years, using K9 transport vans and patrol routes. Nobody checks a dog unit." Emily listened, horror creeping into her veins. Daniel added, "A rookie, Ben Parker, 22. Bright kid, eager. He noticed GPS inconsistencies, showed me. We started collecting evidence." His hand curled into a fist. Cole found out. The memory flickered across his features. A boot slamming his ribs, hands grabbing his jacket, metal cuffs snapping around his wrist. He demanded the drive. I didn't give it to him. So he beat me unconscious, threw me back in the truck, cuffed me to the wheel. His voice cracked, and pushed us off the road. Emily inhaled sharply. But if he wanted the evidence, where is it now? Daniel's gaze shifted toward the smallest puppy, barely palm-sized, with softer fur and rounder ears than the others. Around the pup's neck was a thin red nylon collar, damp but intact. Emily leaned closer, confused. Daniel reached out with shaking fingers, turning the collar gently. I knew he'd search my pockets, my vest, even the truck. With care, he slipped a fingertip beneath a faint seam near the buckle, a nearly invisible line of careful stitching. The fabric peeled back just enough for him to pinch something out. A micro SD card, no larger than Emily's smallest fingernail. It gleamed under the firelight. Emily's breath caught. You hid it in the puppy's collar? No one checks a dog, Daniel murmured, especially not a pup. Before she could respond, Atlas shot up from the rug, ears pricked, shoulders tight. A deep growl vibrated from his chest, directed toward the wall of windows facing the dark forest. Emily froze. Daniel tensed despite his injuries. Outside, just beyond the glass, the rain thinned for a moment, and Emily saw it. A shadow. Still. Unmoving. Watching. Someone was standing in the trees. Morning arrived in Evergreen Falls with a pale, watery light that barely pierced the thick mist wrapped around the forest like a damp shroud. Rain had eased to a drizzle, but the sky held the weight of another storm waiting to break. Inside Emily Hart's wooden estate, warmth clung to the air. Burning cedar, damp wool, and the faint, milky scent of 5 tiny German Shepherd pups, nursing weakly from improvised bottles. Emily sat cross-legged on the rug, her green coat discarded and her long hair pulled into a loose knot, scrolling through news alerts on her tablet. Every headline was a blow. Rookie Officer Ben Parker missing. APD K-9 handler Daniel Reed under investigation, considered unstable. Lieutenant Marcus Cole leads urgent search for missing officers. Daniel stood behind her, leaning heavily on the stone hearth. The night's rest hadn't softened the bruises blooming across his jaw or the stiffness in his ribs, but what hurt more was the look on the screen. Marcus Cole, his once admired commanding officer, stood before a swarm of cameras in full uniform, face set in a mask of noble concern. Cole was in his early 40s, tall, with sandy blonde hair always styled into a regulation-perfect part. His features were sharply handsome, though too polished, like someone who practiced sincerity in a mirror. Behind his neatly pressed uniform and soft-spoken charm was a man whose ambition had curdled into darkness. Losing his father, a respected police captain, when Cole was a teenager had twisted something in him. From that day, he craved admiration, power, and the image of a flawless hero, and he would kill to preserve it. Watching him on screen now, eyes glistening with fabricated grief as he spoke of his missing officers, Emily felt disgust churn in her stomach. "He's unbelievable," she muttered. "The villain playing saint." Daniel didn't speak. His gray eyes held a distant storm of their own. Atlas, lying with his chin on the floor, stiffened suddenly. The big German shepherd's ears snapped upright, a low, warning growl vibrating through his chest. At the same moment, the 5 pups, still fragile but stronger than the night before, whimpered and huddled tight, sensing something their human rescuers could not yet see. Emily's gaze darted to the tablet. She immediately switched screens and activated the home's advanced security system, an inheritance from her tech mogul father who had believed in overbuilding everything, including paranoia. On the wall-mounted monitor, indicators lit up one by one. Thermal cameras, satellite-linked motion sensors, infrared perimeter scanners, hidden microphones, and a reinforced trapdoor leading to an underground safe room. Daniel watched with quiet surprise. Her house wasn't just luxury. It was a fortress disguised as a woodland retreat. "Your father must have been preparing for a war," he muttered. Emily shrugged. "In his industry, competition feels like one." She inserted the micro SD card into her encryption console. A progress bar crawled across the screen, decrypting evidence Daniel had risked his life to hide. Transaction logs, flight manifests, shipment routes, hundreds of files began populating the screen. Then the house lights flickered. Atlas growled again. Emily rushed to the secondary monitor above the fireplace, this one feeding from a hidden roof camera perched high among the cedar beams. The image loaded, and her breath hitched. A police helicopter hovered above the tree line, its searchlight sweeping in long, predatory arcs through the fog. The aircraft, a rugged aerospatiale model in blue and white colors, pushed through the mist like some mechanical hawk, blades chopping the air in rhythmic, ominous pulses. Inside the cockpit stood Marcus Cole himself. Even from the grainy camera angle, Emily could see him leaning over the console, speaking sharply to the pilot, pointing toward the valley below. A side officer beside him, a bulky man with a squared jaw and perpetually clenched teeth, operated a thermal imaging device. The man's name badge read Graham Fisk, a secondary antagonist Daniel recognized at once. Fisk was a career enforcer, mid-30s, built like a bulldog with a shaved head and thick neck. Known for hiding brutality under official procedure, Fisk's reputation had always chilled rookies. Seeing him beside Cole meant things were worse than Emily imagined. Daniel's voice tightened. He brought Fisk. This isn't a rescue operation. Emily zoomed in on the roof feed. The helicopter was tracing slow circles. Its thermal camera swept across the treetops, glowing orange whenever it passed over a warm-blooded creature. Then the beam shifted, slowly, methodically, toward Emily's property line. "He's not searching for survivors," she whispered. "He's hunting for someone who escaped." The helicopter drew closer. Atlas stood rigid, hackles raised. Daniel limped beside the window, wincing with each movement. After a tense moment, the helicopter's searchlight paused, hovering over the clearing behind Emily's house. Emily's chest constricted. The helicopter inched lower. Cole leaned forward, his face inches from the thermal screen. His finger traced a heat signature, a trail of footprints half-washed by rain, yet still visible through infrared. Footprints leading directly toward Emily's home. Emily froze as Cole's lips moved silently in the feed, forming a single, chilling phrase her security camera captured without audio. "Found you." The fog thickened as the day crawled toward evening, settling over Evergreen Falls like a heavy blanket of breathless gray. The helicopter's roar had long since faded into the mountains, forced back by the dense cloud cover, but the silence it left behind felt far more menacing. Emily Hart stood at the edge of her wide living room, her pulse steady but sharp as she studied the security feed. The quiet held too much weight, too much intention. Atlas, her massive sable German shepherd, paced in tight, controlled circles, muscles taut, ears high and twitching with every faint vibration in the earth. His instincts were a warning siren Emily trusted more than any alarm system. She moved quickly. "Daniel, we have visitors coming," she murmured, already lifting the hatch to the reinforced safe room beneath the wooden floor. Daniel Reed, bruised, battered, and still limping from his injuries, didn't argue. He lifted 2 of the 5 pups carefully, tiny warm bundles covered in mottled black and tan fuzz, while Emily scooped up the remaining 3. Daniel descended the ladder first, grimacing at the sting in his ribs. The underground room was compact but secure, built of steel panels padded with insulation. The space contained emergency supplies, a secondary communication terminal, filtered ventilation, and a small padded area Emily once thought she'd never need. Atlas watched from above, waiting for Emily's signal. Emily lowered the hatch, straightened the heavy bearskin rug over it, then slid a solid oak coffee table into place. Daniel's voice drifted faintly upward through the grating before it sealed. "Be careful, Emily." She forced a smile she didn't feel. "That's the plan." Atlas sat beside her as she walked to the front door, shoulders squared, her long chestnut hair still damp from the earlier rain. She traded her green coat for a darker one, a tailored charcoal gray wool garment that gave her an austere, impenetrable elegance. Her posture straightened, chin lifted, not in arrogance but in defiance, the kind only someone who had tasted real fear could wield. Then came the sound she had been expecting. Engines. Multiple. The low, throaty rumble of ATVs and heavy-duty off-road trucks, far too large and powerful for legitimate search and rescue. The kind used by men who didn't want witnesses. Outside, through sheets of misty rain, she watched 3 ATVs and a blacked-out police SUV roll into her clearing. The ATV riders dismounted, 3 men in tactical jackets and mismatched gear, each with the posture of someone who preferred violence to conversation. The police SUV door opened last. Lieutenant Marcus Cole stepped out, immaculate in appearance despite the weather. His uniform, dark blue, freshly pressed, contrasted with the dirt and rain splattered across the clearing. His hair, sandy blonde and combed to military neatness, didn't move even as the rain struck it. His expression was carved from false concern, but his eyes, icy blue, calculating and cold, betrayed a predator's patience. He approached with a smile that never touched those eyes. "Miss Hart," he greeted, his voice low and warm enough to fool strangers. "Apologies for the intrusion. We're searching for a dangerous officer who may be hiding in these woods. Have you seen anyone suspicious?" Emily leaned against the doorframe, one eyebrow raised. Her tone was smooth, almost bored. "It's a stormy day, Lieutenant. Everything looks suspicious." Cole's smile faltered before sliding back into place. "May we look inside? For your safety. This officer, Daniel Reed, may be armed." Emily took a slow breath. "Let me be clear, Lieutenant. My home is private property. Unless you have a warrant, you're not stepping inside." One of the ATV men, a burly figure with a thick beard and scarred knuckles, shifted forward aggressively. Emily flashed him a look so sharp he paused mid-step. Atlas matched her intensity, placing his body slightly ahead of her, chest low, tail straight, a quiet guardian ready to strike if needed. Cole's facade cracked. His jaw flexed, nostrils flared. A faint red flush crawled up his neck. This was the real Cole, impatient, entitled, furious when someone refused to bend to him. "Miss Hart," he said softly, dangerously, "we can make this very simple, or very complicated." Emily lifted her left wrist. "And I can make it very recorded." She tapped the face of her smartwatch lightly. The screen glowed. For the first time, Cole hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the device, then back at her. A muscle in his cheek twitched. "Turn that off." "No." Silence hardened between them. Rain pattered against the porch roof, the sound harsh in the tension. Emily's voice dropped, quiet but deliberate. "Leave." Cole stepped closer, the brim of his cap dripping rainwater. "You're interfering with the police investigation," he hissed. "And you're trespassing," Emily replied calmly. "Try again when you have paperwork." She pressed a button on her watch, the subtle motion of someone sending a recorded file to someone who mattered. And indeed she had. FBI Special Agent Grace Miller, a woman Emily had once met at a charity cybersecurity gala. Grace was a sharp-featured woman in her mid-40s, tall and lean, with braided black hair streaked with silver and skin the warm brown of polished cedar. Known for her relentless pursuit of corruption cases, Grace had eyes that missed nothing and a reputation for ending careers without hesitation. Emily trusted her, and she needed her now. Cole sensed something shifting beyond his control. He stepped back, pointing at the house. "I'll be returning with a no-knock warrant." His voice had lost all pretense. "When I do, I suggest you're not inside." Emily didn't move. "I'll take my chances." Cole spun on his heel, fury rippling beneath his stiff posture. The ATV men followed, muttering. Engines roared to life. As the vehicles disappeared down the dirt trail, Emily's smartwatch vibrated. A message flashed across the screen. "Received, analyzing audio. Stay inside. Rapid response en route." Far down the mountain road, Marcus Cole's SUV accelerated, headlights slicing through the fog. He was racing toward the nearest magistrate, the one who always rubber-stamped his requests. A no-knock warrant would be in his hands within the hour. And when he returned, he wouldn't be asking to come inside. Night settled over Evergreen Falls in a stillness so complete it felt wrong, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. The rain had slowed to a faint mist, clinging to the moss and slick bark outside Emily Hart's wooden estate. Deep beneath the floorboards, the hidden bunker felt almost womb-like, dim, quiet, and humming faintly with filtered air. Emily crouched beside Daniel Reed, who rested against the steel wall with the stubborn posture of a man refusing to show weakness. His bruises had deepened into dark, painful patterns, but his eyes, gray, steady, held resolve rather than fear. The 5 German shepherd pups slept in a tiny cluster on his lap, their round bellies rising and falling in uneven rhythms. Atlas stood at the ladder, tall and imposing, his wide shoulders blocking much of the hatch above. The big dog's ears were stiff, his muscles coiled tight, his dark amber eyes fixed upward. He wasn't just alert, he was bracing for war. Emily placed a hand on his flank. "Easy, boy." Atlas didn't blink. Something was coming, and Atlas knew it before any human could. Above them, tires crunched over gravel, multiple engines, heavy ones, the kind used for forced entry, not rescue. Daniel tensed. Emily tapped her smartwatch, feeding live audio from her porch camera into the bunker. Harsh voices erupted above, men barking orders, boots stomping across the deck, the clatter of metal breaching tools. A new voice cut through it all, calm, polished, venomous. Marcus Cole. "Positions, on my count," he commanded, his tone dripping with the confidence of a man who believed the world bent for him. Through the faint static of the watch's microphone, Emily could hear him pacing. She imagined him standing tall in the rain, sandy blonde hair slicked back beneath his hood, uniform immaculate despite the storm. "This house is harboring a fugitive and stolen evidence," he declared. "We breach in 10. Daniel whispered. "He got the warrant." Emily shook her head. "He got a signature from someone who didn't know the truth, or didn't want to know it." Atlas growled, a deep, vibrating rumble that filled the bunker. The pups stirred. Daniel pulled them closer. Above them, Cole continued. "Team 1, prepare the ram. Team 2, cover the north windows. Nobody leaves this place." Rain dripped like a slow clock. Then, from the opposite side of the forest, a sudden blast of light. White floodlights cut through the trees, bright enough to turn night into hollow daylight. Engines, larger, heavier, roared in from the far ridge. Emily's smartwatch feed flickered as multiple vehicles crested the slope. Black SUVs with federal plates, armored vans, tactical teams in full gear. Daniel exhaled shakily. "That has to be them." Emily didn't smile, but the tension in her shoulders loosened just enough to breathe. Upstairs, Cole's voice snapped. "What the hell?" Metal slammed as his men spun their weapons toward the tree line. But it was already over. A woman stepped from the lead federal vehicle, a tall, lean figure in a navy field jacket marked with bright yellow letters, FBI, Special Agent Grace Miller. Her long, silver-streaked black hair which was braided tight against her back, her posture crisp and unyielding. She had the bearing of a seasoned predator, but unlike Cole, she hunted for justice, not self-preservation. Grace didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Marcus Cole," she called across the clearing, cold and sharp as winter frost. "By authority of federal warrant, You're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, smuggling of restricted weapons, and obstruction of justice. Cole barked a laugh. High, brittle. You've made a mistake, Agent Miller. I'm conducting an authorized... Grace lifted her hand. A small speaker crackled to life, and Marcus Cole's own voice, recorded with cruel clarity, flooded the night. When I come back, I'm not coming back to ask polite questions. I'll be returning with a no-knock warrant. Don't be here when I do. Silence. Every officer in Cole's team froze. Grace nodded. Case closed. Her agents surged forward. Cole reached for his gun. Maybe instinct, maybe desperation, but 3 red laser dots snapped onto his chest instantly. He froze, terror flooding his eyes. In seconds, he was tackled, disarmed, and pinned face down in the mud. The man who once commanded a city now struggled helplessly beneath federal boots. Moments later, Emily opened the bunker hatch. Atlas climbed out first, head high, tail raised, a silent guardian inspecting the chaos. Daniel followed slowly, cradling the 5 pups. They blinked under the floodlights, whimpering, confused but alive. An EMT hurried to Daniel's side, a middle-aged man named Rob Sanchez, with kind eyes and graying stubble. He helped Daniel sit, checking his injuries with gentle precision. "You're safe now," Rob murmured. Daniel nodded weakly, watching as Grace cuffed Cole with professional indifference. "He can't hurt anyone anymore," Emily said softly. Daniel's gaze shifted to her, gratitude clear. "You saved us," he said. She shook her head. "We all saved each other." Days passed. Cole's entire operation unraveled under FBI investigation. Ben Parker's body was found, proof of Cole's cruelty, and the rookie officer was honored posthumously statewide. Daniel was cleared, restored, and invited back to the K-9 division as a lead trainer. Emily became a reluctant media darling, the heiress who sheltered a wounded officer. Though she avoided the spotlight whenever possible, her priority was always the pups. A month later, sunlight washed over the new K-9 training facility at Evergreen Ridge. Birds called overhead, and pine needles glittered with dew. Atlas sat beside Emily like a grumpy uncle, chest puffed out as he watched the training yard. Daniel, now stronger and freshly shaven, knelt in the grass. "Come here, team," he called. 5 German Shepherd pups, now sturdy, energetic, and impossibly mischievous, bounded toward him in a clumsy parade. One tripped, rolled, then kept running. Emily laughed. "They're just like you," she teased. "Stubborn, but loyal." Daniel met her gaze. "They survived because of you." Emily shook her head, smiling. "Because of us." Atlas barked once as if agreeing. Sunlight filtered through the pines, warmth brushing their faces. The storm had passed, but something new had begun. A pack formed not by blood, but by survival, trust, and unspoken bond. Emily, Daniel, Atlas, and 5 brave little pups, a family forged in the heart of the forest. Sometimes, in the darkest corners of the forest and the quietest hours of the night, a small light appears. One we didn't expect, one we didn't ask for, but one sent to remind us that we are never truly alone. What happened to Emily, Daniel, Atlas, and the 5 little pups wasn't just survival. It was a reminder that even in a world full of danger, betrayal, and storms that never seem to end, God still sends miracles in the form of people, moments, and second chances. Maybe your own storm looks different. Maybe it isn't a forest or a corrupt officer. Maybe it's loneliness, illness, bills on the table, or a heart that's been tired for too long. But just like Daniel found hope again in a stranger's kindness, just like those 5 tiny pups found life when they were only inches from death, you too are held in God's hands, even when you can't see it. And if you need a reminder today, let this be it. God still answers. God still protects. God still sends the right people at the right time. If this story touched you or reminded you of someone who needs hope, please share it with them. Leave a comment below, tell us where you're watching from so our community can pray for you by name. And if you believe in stories that show courage, faith, and the quiet miracles hidden in everyday life, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. May God bless you and your family tonight. May He be your shelter in the storm, your protector in the dark, and your quiet miracle when you need it most. If you believe that His light still shines, type Amen in the comments so we know our prayer has reached you.